Welcome to a TMC and TMC Net interview. My name is Rich Tehrani, and we're thrilled to have you here. On our program today is Alicia, who is the Dell Expert Network Program Manager at Dell Technologies. Alicia, welcome to the program. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm great. I know that's a mouthful there with my title, but thank you. I'm doing good today.
That's great. So for people who may not be familiar with what your program does, what your organization does, could you go into a little bit of detail, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Dell Expert Network is a rewards and benefits program for managed service providers and IT consultants, specifically MSPs who are serving the small business market. So this is a program that's a little newer. We're about a little over 3 years old, but this is an alternative to being a channel partner with Dell. So if you saw your business model changing from being a hardware reseller and that kind of being your bread and butter to be more of a service provider, and going directly to your end user customers as opposed to procuring the hardware for yourself. That's kind of where our program sits, and it's an alternative solution to those MSPs who are kind of exploring new business models within this market.
That's very exciting. And what are your size limits in terms of when you say serving smaller customers, about where?
Yeah, typically it's less than 100 employees. It's going to be dependent. At Dell, we kind of classify small businesses, how much business that company has done with Dell. So even if it's a larger company, but they're a new Dell shop, they would still be considered small business. But typically for a mature business that's been doing some business with Dell, typically it's less than 100 employees. So if you're an MSP who is serving companies within your portfolio of about that size, then that's really who we're targeting with this program.
That's great. And what are some of the benefits?
Yeah, so the main benefit of becoming a Dell expert is having a dedicated account team. And this came from feedback from a lot of focus groups that we did when creating this program, is that one of the main pain points for MSPs was vendor relationships, and having so many vendor relationships that they're toggling at all times, and just having that be a struggle when trying to communicate and purchase from a hardware provider. So you'll be assigned a dedicated account team either from Nashville, Tennessee or Round Rock, Texas. One kind of throat to choke, one email to send, one phone number to call for all of your needs. And we also give you rewards back for any purchases through you or your end users. It's always a base level of 3% back in Dell rewards. But right now we have some additional promotions that we're running right now that you can stack to actually earn up to 8% back in Dell rewards on those purchases, depending on what you're purchasing and what payment method you're using. But we can hopefully link to our landing page in the description of the video. We have about 5 or 6 main benefits of the program, but those are probably the top 2 that MSPs really value and seem to respond to when I'm speaking to them.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, certainly, if you've been following this market back when we used to call it value-added reseller and value-added dealer back in the 1980s and 90s, the margins for hardware were certainly significant. And with the advent of the internet, the challenges that resellers, now we call them mostly MSPs, is they've been dealing with this transparency of pricing, which really hurts their margins because it's difficult for them to mark product up, but at the same time customers expect them to spend hours in terms of doing the procurement and ascertaining needs, and sometimes eating the product shipping charges if a wrong product is ordered for some minor issue. So there are a lot of things that can hurt the modern day reseller, but to find out that they can get some sort of rebate back is a big plus.
Yeah, and that was kind of the thought with our program, and that's where we're seeing the market shifting in terms of the business model of the modern day MSP, is that it's less value added reseller and more added services, because those margins are shrinking, have been shrinking so much in past years, and MSPs are seeing the value of reselling and taking on that capital expense on their own books like less and less, because if you're making 2, 3, 4, 5 points on something, does it make sense for you to tie up that much of your own capital to not have that much upside on the back end? So we developed this program so that there is more transparency directly to the end user. So that the end user feels like they're included in the entire process and they're not, they can't go, we always have those end users, the MSPs will know that go and price check every single thing that they send them in a quote. They're Googling and calling us and saying, my MSP gave me this price, like what is the actual price? And we're like, oh, those conversations are sometimes difficult to navigate, but this program kind of takes that element out of it because it brings the end user with you through the entire purchase process. And then we actually have ways that the MSP can roll their service fees into the payment plans of the end users so that the MSP gets paid, usually before the equipment ships, and then it consolidates billing for the end user and provides more transparency in terms of pricing. That way it's broken out with their hardware needs, the MSP service needs, any financing charges that they have. So they have one person to pay back as opposed to paying Dell back for the hardware and then paying their MSP either in one lump sum up front or, if they're on a managed service contract. So kind of helps address that need in the market.
Yeah, it sounds like a win-win.
Yeah.
That's great. And now that we're hopefully coming out of this pandemic, have things changed? Has it modified the way you guys have done business and dealt with the MSPs? And do you think it's going to change again as we slowly get back to the office?
Yeah, we're slowly starting to see it change. Of course, my role pre-pandemic, I was traveling a ton to industry events, talking to MSPs face to face all the time, doing presentations, helping folks out in the field with their MSP business. And virtually overnight, that ended. I was supposed to go to a channel partners event in Las Vegas, and I think 2 days before I got on my flight, everything shut down, and all those events went virtual, all of the meetups, conversations, networking and things went virtual. So we're starting to see that shift more back in person, starting this summer and then definitely into this fall. So I think that will, Dell will, of course, is a large corporation. So we're more conservative in that approach in terms of getting back in front of people, but inevitably that will happen at some point, hopefully this year. So that will change because, as MSPs are going back in person and Dell is going back in person, inevitably their customers will be going back into the office, and it's reassessing those technology needs and then reassessing for each end user what that proportion of, work from anywhere, as everyone's calling it now, will look like for each of their customers. Will everyone go back full in person? Will there be more flexibility in terms of work from home? And that's something that we will help them navigate, for their end users. And as that technology changes, do they have 30 desktops that have been sitting in their office that's been vacant for the last year collecting dust? And how in the world are they going to service those? And are they still working? And kind of navigating that technology roadmap as those small businesses go back in the office.
Yeah, it's a lot to manage.
Yeah.
Security, putting cybersecurity on all these different endpoints and just keeping the network secure with this work from anywhere. Obviously, it's been a challenge for the whole industry, and hopefully, as we get back to the office and there's a little more certainty in terms of how work is going to be done. Obviously, there'll be some hybrid, some full-time in-house, and some or in office, and some full-time at home. But we'll at least have a better sense and be able to allocate resources to managing the workflow of today.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see. There's been some different polls and webinars and different activities with MSPs that we've done, and just kind of getting their feedback on what are your small business end users saying to you. Like, I think one poll that we took in a recent webinar was like 75% plus of the small businesses that they were talking to are going to come back in person at some capacity, because we've all seen those headlines of larger tech companies and things letting their leases go and just saying, hey, everyone's everyone's going to be remote from here on out. It just reduces overhead in terms of costs. It makes more sense. But what we're seeing for small business customers is that the majority of them are at least going to go back into the office in some capacity. It may not be at 100% of where they were before, but they are, just like everyone, the human element of working every day and having that interaction with your teammates is still really important.
Yeah, that makes good sense. So for the MSPs out there that are watching and they're trying to figure out whether they should reach out, do you need to be a current Dell reseller at all, or are you looking for maybe people that just don't know about your program that have currently sold Dell, or really any reseller that has any kind of hardware sales would be the right fit for you?
Yeah, so the people who would fit best in our program would be the hardware resellers that were maybe past Dell channel partners that program really isn't working for them anymore. If you're a current Dell channel partner and you're still running your business through that program and you're happy with that, then we don't want to disrupt the business that you're currently doing with Dell. Right now, you're not eligible to be in both programs at the same time. But if you have been a Dell partner in the past and your business model has changed or shifted a little bit, as we mentioned before, with how you're doing business with your end users, or if you're an MSP who doesn't currently work with Dell, when we were in-person events, I would talk to people and they would just say it just seems a little bit overwhelming when dealing with Dell because there's a million different departments, there's a million different people you can email, and I just want to talk to someone and tell them about my business and what my goals are and how I'd like to work with Dell, with my end users, and hopefully have the listening ear to help navigate the Dell side, because it can be a little bit complex if you're not super familiar with it. So that's really where I come in. Whether or not you're working with Dell currently or not, you can still send me an email directly. Like Rich said, I'm the Dell Expert Network program manager. So whether you belong in the Dell Expert Network or after speaking about your business model, I think you would fit better in another program that we have. I'm happy to have those conversations with people and just kind of lead them in the right direction and have like a real person's email or a real person's phone number that they can call directly and get help with navigating that relationship and making sure that they're taking advantage of all of the benefits we have to offer.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. And then just contact information. You want to just give us the URL so people know how to get to it?
Yeah, it's dell.com/expert network.
Perfection. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for being here. Really appreciate it, Lisa. That was
Awesome.
great.
Thanks, Rich. Have a good one.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.